And welcome to Preparing for the Apocalypse, Episode 3. Our episode today is about clean energy tech, an industry webinar created in collaboration with Brink and the Entrepreneur Media Hub. So Brink is a different breed of venture capital and accelerator firm. Core to their business is the belief that some of the world's biggest challenges can be solved by entrepreneurs, who they like to call game changers. And I am pleased to note that we have some of those game changers with us today. Now, The Entrepreneur, of which I am a part, is a media hub aiming to harness digital technology in order to shine a spotlight on startups and entrepreneurs. So today we have gathered clean energy tech startups, game changers in their field, and a representative from GPIC, which is Bahrain's own, to weigh in on their ideas for clean energy and how they believe it will impact our immediate and future environments. So I would like to introduce our panel for today. We have Mr. Georges Khoury, the Managing Director of CrowdPower, Mr. Ankit Chauhan, the co-founder of Avrio Energy, and of course, Mr. Khalid Al Bin Ali, the Plants Operations Manager of GPIC. Hello.
Hi.
I'll start the panel. Hello. I'll start the panel with Mr. Georges. First question. Your company wants customers to save money on electricity and, incidentally, to save the planet. Can you tell us more about how you guys do this, how you manage this?
So we want to save money before the apocalypse. So we're trying to help our clients, realize the economic value of having renewable energy. So we encourage them to think about the savings they can make on their electricity bills that will pay back for their capital investment in a solar power system. We would like everybody to go for renewable energy, but if it doesn't make economic sense for them, then we don't want it to be at the expense of their financial well-being.
Okay, but when you start saying that, if it doesn't make economic sense to the customers, if I may ask, like how are you trying to promote CrowdPower? Because
Okay, so we're on a B2B2C business model. So our main clients are people who install solar power systems for others. So our technology will help them give their client a way of consuming all the solar power they generate, so they can reduce as much of their electricity bill as possible.
Awesome. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself, your background, and what a day in your life as the managing director of CrowdPower entails?
Yeah, I'm not your typical entrepreneur. I've worked in the corporate world for 23 years before founding my company. So I know both worlds now. And there's a big difference between being an entrepreneur and being in the corporate world. So let me tell you, I do now many, many more functions than I used to do when I was a GM at the corporate level, because we're a smaller team and everybody needs to do everything. So a typical day doesn't exist. There's no typical day. Every day has its own challenges, and we need to think of on our feet all day long. So yeah, it's more enjoyable, but it's much more difficult.
Okay, I'll move now to Mr. Ankit Chauhan. First two questions. Can you tell us more about your AI-powered facility operating system?
Cool. Thanks, Annie. So before I tell about what we are trying to do, I just want to highlight that the problem which we are trying to address, right? So since the webinar is about the apocalypse, so let's address that the problem is climate change, which is right now happening. So if you look at the global carbon emissions, so around 28% of total global carbon emissions comes directly from the building operations. So what this means is that going forward, if we are to solve this problem, decarbonization of our built environment is going to be really critical in order to solve for climate crisis. So that is where our AI-powered operating system comes in. So traditionally, if you look at the solutions which are available in the market, right, like the energy management system or the building management system for buildings, they are only accessible by large commercial buildings simply because of the cost and complexity issues. You need a lot of sensors in order to gather data from those buildings. Then you need technical expertise who can analyze the data and identify the energy savings potential, right? So, because and unfortunately, the same set of solution cannot be scaled down to small and medium-sized buildings. Imagine these buildings to be your restaurant or retail outlet or a super chain store or a convenience store. And if you look at the building demography, around 90% of the total building stock comprises of small and medium-sized buildings. That means these people, 90% of the built environment is not even able to contribute towards solving the problem of climate crisis, right? So that is why we are building an AI-powered facility operating system. Imagine our solution to be like an AI-powered energy slash facility manager. So what we do in a simple way is that we collect data from different and disparate sources, from buildings, be it utilities data, be it the maintenance history of the equipment, and so on and so forth. And then our platform sort of organizes the data and then analyzes that what all measures can be taken in order to improve the energy and operational efficiency of that specific building. And the entire platform is based on open API as well, so any enterprise can actually integrate our solution with their existing ERP system or so on and so forth. So yeah, that's what in a nutshell we are trying to do.
That's pretty intense, if I may say so myself. Okay, a net zero planet. Can you explain this concept and how your company is working towards this drive?
Okay, sure. So as I mentioned, right, that net zero is what we are trying to aim for, in the sense that we are trying to decarbonize the built environment. And the idea is very simple that, I mean, if we talk about the net zero concept as such, so the idea is very simple that humans as a species have started to generate a lot of CO2, which if you compare to normal benchmark is very extreme. So in a nutshell, what we want to do is we want to minimize those emissions by investing into technologies which are either reducing CO2 or they are absorbing CO2. But ironically, I find this concept very flawed, in the sense that today, like, you know, what is happening in America, right? I mean, hundreds of people have died in Canada because of extreme heat waves. And a report has come which has scientifically proved that the probability of all those heat waves happening because of climate, I mean, climate change has made it almost 150 times more likely of such events happening, right? So, I mean, today still, like, we're talking about net zero, in the sense that we are going to make sure that the CO2 emissions which we are making, we are balancing it out. We are not talking about zero emission planet. So, I mean, obviously, it's a start that talking about a net zero planet, but yeah, I would say we still need to make a lot more progress on this.
So definitely there's a lot of work to be done, and not just by the startups themselves. Let's also now take a look at what our industry spokesperson has to say. Mr. Khalid, can you walk us through a day in the life of a plant's operations manager in GPIC?
Hi, Annie. Yes, certainly, yes. Being the plant operation manager means that I'm responsible about all the production facilities in the complex. So my basic duty is to ensure that the plants are running and managed well and running safe, efficient, and effective in a way that we can reduce our production target and reach our sales target as well. On daily basis, I attend and chair what we call the company as Plants Operation Coordination Committee, and that comprises it has representative from all departments, supporting department, including to my subordinates as well. So we'll be representative from maintenance, technical service, warehouse, and also engineering, laboratory, all the disciplines, so that we meet and tackle the daily issues that are arising from the plant, and we address them on the spot. And of course, for long-term solutions or mitigations, we put a plan so that we can follow up later. the rest of the day is the business as usual for me. I mean, we just have to, again, look for our departmental subjects. We review our performance reports, audit reports, look after our staff and their development programs and so on.
Okay, so I'd like Mr. Georges, whose day varies greatly from one day to the next. Yours is pretty straightforward. In your daily activities in GPIC, what do you think is the potential for clean tech and or clean energy in a production facility?
Yeah, in a production, first let me okay, clean technology and clean energy, they sound the same and more or less they are the same, but there's a small distinction that we need just to demark. Clean energy depends on the renewable sources. So whether be it solar energy, wind energy, hydro energy, and so on, biomass, fuel mass. But when it comes to technical to clean technology, it is slightly different because clean technologies are basically developed to handle the pollutants and the waste that are generated from mainly the fossil-based industry. Okay, so that is but both, of course, both the concept for both technologies are to reduce the waste, reduce the pollution, and conserve the raw material and the natural resources. Okay, so looking to my plant, of course, we are a heavy user of natural gas, i.e. fossil oil. So we have a big room for let's say, embracing the clean technology as well as the clean energy in our complex. So there are lots of opportunity. Once it is identified, it will be realized and it will be tackled and dealt with.
Okay, I have a question that any of the three can answer. How is the way we are using energy different and changing because of what happened to the world during COVID?
Yeah, I can add. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Okay, how about Mr. Khalid first and then Mr. Georges?
Yeah, actually, the COVID has impacted not only Bahrain, it's impacted all the producers, all the chain actually worldwide. So we had to take measures. So we had to take some measures. We had let's say a shortage of supplies of few chemicals. So we have to do some modifications to do and conserve our energy more so that we can last with our inventory for longer time, and we succeeded. Yes, but whether there's an impact, yes, there was an impact, but because of our sustainability system that we adopted in GPIC, we survived.
Mr. Georges?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about our customers. I mean, the COVID has showed us that most of the white-collar jobs can be done from home. So, and we think that this is an ongoing trend that's not going to stop because COVID stopped. So there'll be a shift from in the energy consumption from the commercial areas to the residential areas.
Okay.
And we hope that this will also help utilities rethink their philosophy of centralized generation, where they have big plants that serves big cities via transmission lines. We think that as people move out of cities, then utilities have better start thinking about decentralized solutions where they generate the power locally and they distribute it to their users, to their nearby users.
So you're saying that there may come a time when there will be a shift from city to residential areas, and that like energy can be decentralized in that way.
Yeah, I mean, cities will not disappear all of a sudden, but I mean, people will not have as many incentives to go to city centers as they do before COVID.
Interesting, interesting. Ankit, has your concept been tested and how has it been received?
Yeah, sure. So yes, I mean, I think if I take an example of one of the best validation which we have received so far, I would say is our partnership with Schneider Electric. So Schneider Electric, as many people would know, is one of the global leader in energy management and building management solutions. So we are recently, I mean, they've recently invested in us after obviously vetting our technology and product. And as part of our partnership, they are going to launch our product in multiple geographies as well. So that is one of the strong validation, which I think I can give you as an example.
To the three gentlemen, do you prefer fuel or a clean tech source of energy?
Well, speaking for myself, I like both, but I like the fuel oil more because of one reason, because of reliability. Yes, we know the fuel oil. Actually, in a region like us, where the fuel oil are abundant and it's available, the tendency of the governments or the investors, they like to go for for production facility that are based on fuel oil. Okay. Because of, as I said, it's proven, it's commercially viable, and there are good track records. So the only difference now, if we, I prefer that yes, I can integrate some of the clean technologies in my plant, but it will not be in the core business or of my production unit, because. For example, if I depend on solar energy as a power generation, okay, I am worried that I can get disruption, I can get discontinuity of the power supply because of the climatic condition, and that is also true for the power generation from the wind source. So and that can be acceptable. This kind of disruption can be acceptable for domestic users, okay, because nothing will go wrong. It's only a nuisance for the people, but in our plants, it's safety comes as a paramount importance. And if you are subjecting the plants for disruption, you can have catastrophic results and unbearable consequences. So that's why we don't rely much on renewable, let's say, based power for the manufacturing side. But our complex is big, and we have also buildings outside the plant area. Those, yes, we have programs, and we have implemented some of our modifications that solely depend on the renewable energy. So we have to strike a balance in the production and petrochemical plants in particular.
I think Mr. Georges wants to say something. Please go ahead, sir.
I mean, I'm gonna shock you. I mean, even though I like for renewable energy to take over now, it's not gonna be possible anytime soon, because like Mr. Khalid said, there is this intermittence problem of the renewable sources, wind, solar, this kind of thing. So we need to think of it as a combination of energy storage and renewable energy. And we need for energy storage to be economically viable. So this will happen over the decade. So by 2030, I think we can start thinking about phasing out fossil fuel plants.
Interesting. Okay, follow-up question. How do you see solar power in the next 5 years, especially in the Middle East? If I believe Crowd Power is based in Europe and servicing peoples in Europe. Do you think that the Middle East is a tough market to crack in terms of like renewables, clean tech, and so on? And we have somebody here who can answer that.
Okay, so just because you said Crowd Power, I mean, we're also based in Bahrain, so the Middle East is in our heart. So, so we think about it constantly. When you think about solar in the Middle East, you need to make the distinction between what you think about as solar, which is the rooftop solar that you see on houses and this kind of thing, and the utility scale solar, which you don't see, which is the big plants that are in the desert somewhere that are feeding directly into the grid. So this type of installation for solar in the Middle East, this is what's going to grow a lot quicker than the smaller installations, because governments have made commitments for emission reductions in the Paris Accord, and they need to comply with these reductions. So the easiest way to do it is to have a big solar plant somewhere in the desert and use that. For the smaller individual solar installations, because the electricity is being subsidized, the economic benefit is very small for people to go to solar. So if government want to push that, they need to really subsidize the capital expenditures that are associated with such installations. So I see the sector are growing at a much slower rate than the big installations.
Interesting. And Kit, how can we transition to a green energy landscape?
Oh, there's no silver bullet, to be honest. There's no standard answer to this question, but uh, yeah, I would. If I had to pick one thing, I would bet on the people in the sense that I mean, I think we're talking about how the government is going to regulate, or they can regulate and sort of help businesses move towards energy transition or towards a green future, right? But to be honest, I mean, what I realized over a period of time is that politics or government is a function of social demand. So until and unless people are not going to demand for it, it is not going to come that easily. And today, in a world where I mean, most of our decisions are driven by economics. I mean, that's why like we are still talking about commercial feasibility or not. Like, I mean, you are drowning in water and you are thinking whether to go for the raft or no, whether it makes sense, things like this. So I would say like I mean collectively, if each of us as an individual can start responsibly thinking about the problem, and also and obviously like it is not, it's easier said than done, in the sense that I mean a lot of the a big fraction of the population is not aware about the what is happening across the different part of the world, right? So that is why I mean like creating local communities, trying to make them inform about the problem and enabling them to sort of participate in this mass movement. So I would say like this would just be another revolution. uh, so I would say like people would be the should be the focus, that everyone should know what is happening, and they should start changing their own usage patterns and start contributing at an individual level, and then obviously with that mass movement at an overall level it would definitely follow.
Okay, just a follow-up question to that. Like, if you ask people to like do their own, in their own way to contribute to like moving towards like a cleaner environment, like what's in it for them? As you mentioned, it may like at the moment it may be more expensive, and consumers definitely like they don't wanna, they don't wanna spend too much, especially now at this times. Like, what's the education part like? Are we educating the public like on green tech or clean tech?
I mean, it's a mix of everything in the sense that first, as a responsible consumer, in the sense that being cognizant of the fact that, wherever we are using resources, we should, doesn't matter if it is only energy, we should think about our overall sustainability in the sense that as a responsible consumer we should consume responsibly. As a citizen of this world we should make the governments come up with more bills and more in infrastructure plans. I mean, just to take an example, like the Green Deal in the Europe and what is going to come in the US is sort of an example of that. Like in Europe and US, a critical mass has achieved in the sense that people have started talking about the problem they are making. Even the companies move towards sustainability, right? So that is happening, and that is why even the government and the private companies have started to look more into the sustainability practices. That now everyone is talking about ESG. A few years back it was not even I mean, and it is a more complex process, to be honest. I mean, when we talk about ESG, it's very complex. You need to spend resources in order to get it done, but businesses have started to get it done simply because there is a major level of awareness in across people. And I mean, even if you talk about our curriculum, right? We used to, as a kid, I mean, I remember my first impression of global warming was when we read about those ozone layer depletion, right? But it has to be magnified now, like it was 5-10 years back. But now there are real examples which we can see across the world, not just in one part of the world. So I would say, like, again, it's a mix of everything. But yeah, educating our children, educating our existing population, then sort of creating a mass movement where government start doing their job actively and forcing businesses to act sooner than later, I would say.
Okay, I have another question which any of the gentlemen may answer. Joe Biden, the current president of the United States, has pledged to spend $1 billion on climate change. What does it mean? Where will the spending go? What does it mean to spend money on climate change?
I mean, it could go anywhere because it's government, so they like to spend money. But I mean, where it should go is towards more renewable energy, and more importantly, more energy efficiency. So even if you're having energy from fossil fuel sources, if you consume less, then you're polluting less. So energy efficiency, which goes from the easiest thing like weatherization, which put insulation on your rooftop, towards installing new equipment. And then for the US in particular, because their infrastructure is very worn down because of no spending for the last 30, 40 years. So improving basic infrastructure will help reduce energy use, and which will help the planet eventually.
Inshallah. Mr. Khalid, can you give examples of clean energy modifications in your facility?
Yes, indeed. I can tell you about the famous project that we have done 10 years ago. It is the installation of a carbon dioxide recovery plant. Actually, the story started because we realized that there's an opportunity to boost the production in one of our plants, which is urea. And urea uses CO2 as a feedstock, but it was taking it all from ammonia. In order to boost the production further, we have two options. Either we can burn more gas, and once we burn more gas, it means that we are, using or depleting the natural resources. Or we also realized that yes, CO2 can be taken from the flue gases that we are anyway emitting to the atmosphere. So we started looking for a technology that can absorb the CO2 at a low pressure, because it was from the flue gases, and we identified two, and then we went into our normal process for implementing projects. We selected one, we awarded the contract, and we installed the CO2 dioxide recovery plant. That has reduced our CO2 footprint by around 450 metric ton per day, and at the same time, we boosted our production by 200 tons. So we met both. We met the environmental objective as well as the commercial part.
Wow. Ankit, I'm not sure if you answered this a while ago, but how can we include local communities and regulators, especially regulators, into this great dialogue that we are having about energy?
I mean, I tried to sort of, it again goes back to what I was previously trying to say. I mean, like, again, like, regulators are the government, and government works on what the people are demanding. I mean, they have a clear agenda. They want to get elected in the next election. That's the hard truth. So the local communities again have to come together, and we have to create some sort of mass movement. And how we do that is going to be challenging. I mean, one of the mass movement which you have seen recently is one of the activists, Greta Thunberg, right, leading the fight against the big presidents of large democracies. So similarly, I think if the only point is that when do we hit that critical mass? It's a question of when. I mean, because just imagine like what is happening recently in Canada. I mean, those people who have actually suffered now will join the movement. So unfortunately, it should not have happened this way. But as more and more like the problem is going to get bigger, the critical mass is going to get hit eventually. It's a matter of time. Hopefully, it happens sooner than later. I mean, that's what I would say.
The question of when is also a question I want to ask Mr. Dorjes. When do you see solar power as the main source of power in homes and cities? You mentioned 2030, but is this the date that you actually see solar power as the main source of power?
I mean, solar on its own can never be the main source because it's only available during the day. So what we do during the night. So we need to have energy storage with solar. So we recharge the batteries from the solar power. So we'll have no need for fossil fuels. Then it brings us back to how expensive is energy storage nowadays. The technology is improving, be it batteries or some other chemical media. So hopefully we'll follow the same trend that the solar followed. So the last 7 years, solar has gone down 80% in price. So hopefully by the end of the decade, we'll also have storage at 80% less in price.
And what does that say about the startups who are doing like solar powered energies? Like, is it making your business more or less profitable?
I mean, it all depends. I mean, there's no general rule of how profitable anything can be. Of course, if the trend is for more solar, then it's more business, then it's more profit. But as we've just discussed, it's all a matter of incentives. So the governments need to incentivize people to consume less fossil fuel. So this is the thing.
Mr. Khalid, what is the future of implementing more modifications in GPIC? Is there a plan to slowly or fully incorporate CleanTech?
Yeah, it is going at a faster rate than before, definitely, and we are looking, for not only clean technology but clean energy, and we have a very ambitious project to, as I said earlier, that we are converting to solar panel for all the buildings that are outside the plant area. We started that in a few areas, in a few locations, but again, that will take a plan, and we already checked the plan, and inshallah, we'll complete the project. We have other projects also, as I said earlier, recovering, recycling. All these are clean technology. We are thinking now of segregating the gray water and recycling it back to be used for irrigation after treatment. There are, of course, and there are specific, let's say, modifications that are within the manufacturing part. Okay, it's complicated to explain, but again, it will all enhance the production. It will reduce the energy consumption per ton. It will reduce the natural gas consumption in total, and it will improve the efficiency and the process in total. Okay, so yes, there are programs. We are much faster than before, and I think we are in the increasing trend.
My last question to all three. Climate change and clean tech, it's still such an abstract concept to common people, to everyday people. So what would you like to say to the common general public? Like, how can they, in their own little way, help towards our drive or our, we had this webinar to prepare for the apocalypse. It was a joke, but maybe now it may come true, like in the near future. What can we say to those people? Like, how can they help, one day at a time, one step at a time? Let's start with you, Mr. Dorjes.
Sure. I mean, it all boils down to a change of behavior. I mean, let me give you an example. If you set your thermostat on your air conditioner 1 degree more than the usual setting, it will save about 3% of your electricity bill. So just doing a small change on your individual level can help. So we need to educate people more to do these small changes in behavior without real inconvenience, and that will add up to a big change for the society as a whole.
Thank you. And Hugh?
Yeah, so to answer the first part of question, that how do we make people understand the concept of climate change, right? To put in a very simple terms, we all know, like, it's a universal fact that overconsumption of anything is harmful for anyone, right? So climate change is a function of extreme CO2 emission. Like we are using few resources. Let me rephrase, we are overusing few resources, which we should not. So it is more about being, and controlling your choices in a sustainable manner, in the sense that, that's what essentially climate change is, right? That CO2 or greenhouse gas emissions are it is more than the normal, simply because we are over consuming some resources. So I would say, like, keeping a climate change in focus. But if we talk about the umbrella problem, that as an individual uh, we should, with our choices, we should have sustainable consumption. That's what essentially it matters. I mean, just the example which George just took, right? I mean, if you are comfortable at 24 degrees centigrade, there's no point in running your HVAC consumption at 23. So those small choices are definitely going to make a big impact, because we are, as human species, we are the major contributor towards all the problems which is happening on this planet, to be honest. So we are the ones who need to control our choices.
Thank you. Mr. Khalid?
Again, the same. It is only two messages for all the individuals: reduce waste and conserve energy at all levels. Reduce your consumption of papers. Reduce anything. You just take the sufficient of everything, sufficient part of everything, and of course conserve energy. That message, I was hearing it when I was 40 years ago. The same message is there, and it is repeating. Just conserve energy, and if we do that, I think we will last. At least we last with our depleting resources much longer.
Thank you. On behalf of Brink and Be Entrepreneur, we want to say thank you to our esteemed panelists, Mr. George Escori, Mr. Ankit Chauhan, and Mr. Khalid Albin Ali. They have come from all over just to present this Preparing for the Apocalypse webinar, episode number 3. And if you're a subscriber, please don't forget to check out our first webinar, which was about agritech, our second, which was about logistics technology, and finally, this will be uploaded on YouTube and everywhere by the end of the week. Thank you so much, and more power.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Officially, like